Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi everybody, I'm so glad you're joining me today for my June wrap up. I am so excited to talk about these books. I always am. If you don't know, hi, welcome, hi. Maybe this is your first monthly wrap up with me. I don't actually talk about every single book that I've read in my monthly wrap ups. I know some creators do that. I enjoy those videos quite a lot. I used to make them myself, but I actually read a crap ton of books, okay? And so I have 38 books that I read this month. Spoiler alert for the stats portion of this video. And so because I love talking about my favorites so much, I am going to be focused on the top 5 books that I read this month. That's what I do in my monthly wrap-ups. I talk a bit about the stats, talk a little bit about some of the fun things and stuff going on in June. And then if you want to hear about every single book that I've read, I actually do weekly wrap-ups where I talk about usually 7 to 12 or 15 books that I've read weekly, and you can find those here in my playlist that has every week so far. We're already up to week 26 is what we've gotten through. Wow, there we are, halfway through the year. How did that happen? So without further ado, let's dive into that. So first off, I do want to start with a couple of fun things that I did this month. I actually just got back from hanging out with my family. We went to the zoo. I go to the zoo back home with my nieces and my sister at least once a year. They get a summer season pass, and I always pay to get in one of the times. And it's a tradition now. We've literally went since the year before my sister had my first niece. So I think it's been like 11 years that we've been going, which is crazy. That zoo has grown so much. The new attraction this year is they have a rhino there now, which was wild. It was wild to see a rhino that close. It was crazy. But it's just fun. Had a great time with that. We also did a mini little road trip and went down to Sioux Falls to help her pick up a 4-wheeler. She has her own now. And I decided to go with her to be a little, travel buddy. I was like, I'm not interested in doing the drive, but I will sit beside you and be driven there if you want a friend. So we did that. And then, yeah, also this month just absolutely flew by. It was crazy. So, okay, that's just a little bit of side stuff. If you'd like to know more about what happens day to day here at the Book Refuge, I do actually do pretty much weekly. They're not exactly like week for week, but on my Patreon, I have exclusive vlogs that I do. That's really the only place that I do vlogs anymore. If you want to know a bit behind the scenes of both like my business as being a full-time creator, as well as just my, off the cuff thoughts about certain things. So anyway, let's get into it. As I said, we're going to start with my stats, and then we'll get into the top 5 books that I read this month, including a new 6-star read, which is always exciting to me. So the stats for this month are, as I mentioned, I read 38 books, and those 38 books consisted of 14,511 pages. The formats that I read these books in is I had 9 physical books, 13 ebooks, 16 audiobooks, and there was 18 that were ARCs. So if you are an astute reader, you'll notice there's a little bit of an overlap for some of those, and that's because sometimes I have both an audio ARC and an e-ARC, or I have the physical book and I also listen to the audiobook. So those numbers don't exactly equal 38 because there's some crossover. That's just how I do it. All right, the ratings of these books were, I did have 1 DNF. I actually talked about the DNF in my week 26 wrap up. So if you want to know what went wrong with one of those books, you can check that out. I had 2 6-star reads, which actually both of the 6-star reads were the same book. I'll explain when I get to that one, because obviously the 6-star read is in my favorite books of the month. I had 9 5-stars, 5 4.5 stars, 13 4 stars, 6 3.5 stars, and 2 3 stars. I also want to bring something up real quick. I had someone comment on a video from the other day, and I know this wasn't meant, like, there was nothing critiquing or weird about this comment, but I still wanted to address it because I feel like, you know, when I'm just used to doing my day-to-day stuff around here, I don't really think about what, you know, people randomly finding my videos know. And so I had someone ask me like what my rating scale was and like why I don't usually have books under 3 stars. And while I won't go into that full explanation here because I have talked about that at different times throughout the years, there's a post pinned on, well, it's not pinned anymore, I guess, but it's on my Instagram, what my, like how I rate books. But the truth is, for me, anything 4 stars and above, I really like it. If it's 3 or 3.5 stars, I may still recommend it, but probably not. And then if it's below that, I generally didn't like it, or I hated it, or I only finished it because I wanted to bitch about it. And I very rarely want to bitch about a book. I usually want to gush about books. And so those of you who wonder, why doesn't she ever rate anything lower? And not that there are a ton of you. Like, again, I'm not even pointing at the finger at the person who wonders this. It's because I don't tend to finish the books that I think I won't like. At this point, I'm 31 years old. Particularly the last 5 years, I've read between 500 and 700 books a year. I have a pretty good idea of what books are going to be 4 stars or higher. I just do. I know what I like. I know what my focus is. I know what I want. And so if I'm getting about 100 pages to halfway through a book and I'm not digging it, I'm usually going to dig out of that book. I'm going to ditch because I don't like rating books less than 3 stars. It gives me no joy. I don't have anything that I get out of it. And my channel is a book recommendation channel, not a like detailed analytical review of them. I mean, not that I don't review the things, but I'm here to gush to you about the books, convince you that you should be reading them, and get you to go read them. Like, that's what I want to do. I want to share the love of books. And so if I don't love a book, sometimes it'll piss me off enough that I want to like sit down and just go at it, but I usually don't. I think anyone who writes a book, they're already a step above me, not above me, but they're a step ahead of me of actually finishing a story. And I don't like disrespecting authors. So you'll even notice whenever I tack a book, I'm not going after the author. I'll just get so frustrated and so passionate that I'll like scream at something. So anyway, this ended up being a total sidetrack that I didn't mean to go down. But to whoever asked that question, again, thank you for asking it. And that's my answer, is that I don't really rate books below 3 stars. You're not wrong. That didn't just, you know, you aren't just missing out on something. In fact, I can go back in my little book right here, which is my, you know, reading journal. And let's see, January, I had 1 2-star and 1 2.5 star. In February, I had nothing below 3 stars. In March, I had 1 2.5 star. In April, I had 1 2-star read. In May, I had nothing below 3 stars. And again, this month of June, as I just shared, I had nothing below 3 stars because I usually get out of there, get out of Dodge. Because if I'm not enjoying a book, I'm not going to finish it. So anyway, unless I'm forced to for some other reason. Okay, that was enough about that. The subgenres of the books that I read were, I had 11 contemporary, 10 dark, 6 erotic, 1 fan fiction, 4 fantasy, 2 historical, 3 romantic suspense, and 1 that was other. And I talk about the other in also my week 26. I reread one of my favorite books with my sister on that road trip. We listened to Illuminae, which is a YA sci-fi, and I love it. So that is the stats here. Let us get into my favorite books. I'm so excited. I've already talked ad nauseum about these because that's usually what happens by the time we get there. So the book that I gave 6 stars and is also the book that I've read twice this month was Honeycut by Sierra Simone. This is book 2 in her Lioness trilogy, and she just goes about ripping our guts out. So why did I read it twice? Yes, I did love it. I gave it 6 stars, but also I received, well, no, wait, I ordered this one. I had pre-ordered this one when Bloom had one of their 25% off deals going on. And so we ended up getting our books early, right? Which can happen when there's no hard release date for places. And then I also got an ALC from Must Love Audio as well, which I honestly wish I knew that I was getting, but at the same time, I read my physical copy and I did annotate this just for me. It's so rare that I get to annotate a book just for myself these days, and I have these fun new annotation stickers to use. So I had a great time reading this physically and then listening to it, which I didn't end up listening to every little bit of it because it's a pretty big book, but I listened to like the first half of it and a reread, and then I skipped to some of my favorite parts. But I basically read this book twice. So I can't tell you too much about this one, given that it is a like direct sequel. It's a continuation of the story. This is a trilogy that it will end with an HEA that is a polyamorous relationship, okay? Sierra Simone has told us that. She does write romance. She writes erotic romance. She writes angsty romance that sometimes has cheating and other nefarious things in it. But we will get our HEA. So she's one of the few ladies that I will let absolutely torture me. And torture us she does. Because if you read Salt Kiss, which you need to read these ones in order. They're all the same couple. So I know some people are waiting for the series to be done, and I don't blame you because she does leave us with some cliffhangers. But I'm a sadist, or no, a masochist. That's what I mean. I'm a masochist, and I do it to myself. And I also just love her stories, and sometimes I do need the break because there's a lot to process. There's a lot of heavy stuff in this story. So sometimes you do need a break, even if you think you don't. And I'm okay that I have the break, even though I am ready to read Saltburn. Like if she was going to hand out Bitterburn, not Saltburn, if she was going to hand out Bitterburn tomorrow, like I'd be there. But this one is Tristan and Isolde retelling. It will be a happily ever after, though. Like I said, we don't know how we'll get there yet. But in this one, Tristan, he's the bodyguard for first Mark and then Mark's intended. Mark is actually engaged to marry Isolde. And if you read Salt in the Wound, which is the prequel that I do suggest you, it really should just be considered like book one because it is Isolde and Mark and their first meeting and them becoming betrothed. And then when we start Salt Kiss is when Tristan is becoming Mark's bodyguard, and then at a certain point in that book, Tristan is supposed to go and pick up Isolde and ride a yacht back with her. And Mark was supposed to be the one to do it, but he gets injured, so he can't go. So anyway, that happens in Salt Kiss, and Tristan and Isolde end up, you know, spoiler alert, having an affair, which it's not quite an affair because both Isolde and Mark have agreed that they can fuck whoever they want until they actually say I do. And so it's a very dangerous game because Tristan already loves Mark and now he's falling for Mark's fiance. So when we get to Honeycut, which picks up pretty much immediately where Salt Kiss has ended, like literally like the same day, we are now in a little pickle because Isolde loves Mark, Tristan loves Mark, and now Isolde and Tristan love each other. So we are in a weird, twisted little triangle. And this one involves a lot of sneaking around and falling deeper in love with all of each other while still, you know, they are cheating on him. And so there is a lot of that going on. But so I think for me, why I'm just so fascinated with this is how deeply Sierra Simone has me loving all three of them. And the way that this works, and she's done this in other series too, like we don't get Mark's POV in either book 1 or 2. We have Isolde's POV in Salt in the Wound. We have Tristan's POV in Salt Kiss. And now in Honeycut, we have both Tristan and Isolde's POV. And if I think of how she's done this in the past, I assume we will get Mark's POV added in to Bitterburn, which will be good because there's a lot of stuff in his head that I need to know. So anyway, I've talked a lot around and around about this. I highly recommend this series. I really do. I understand if you want to wait till Bitterburn is here. I completely get it. I don't love to wait for things either. But sometimes it does feel good to wait. Because like I said, there's a lot to digest. And while this left us with a cliffhanger, I'm very intrigued about what's being set up for the third book. And also there is some progress made in the possible throuple, which again, we know will happen because it will be an HEA. We are definitely not at a throuple yet by the end of this, but we are like a lot closer, and I just love it. So this does also have heavy aspects of BDSM. That is usually, I haven't read a Sierra Simone that doesn't. There is, as I said, there's cheating, there's forbidden love, it's a love triangle, there's it also is erotic romance, so every sex scene is very important. It draws us more into the romance and shows us more of who these people are. It's very powerful, very, very powerful story. So yeah, this was my 6-star read, one of my favorites of the year, and it was a 5 on the chili spice scale as well, very much so. Okay, then we have kind of a completely opposite type of story from Honeycutt. This was actually a very quiet, calm, sweet romance. There's no other way to say it. There is very little angst to this story. It was just very comforting, this book was. So this book is called The Feud by Sawyer Bennett, and don't let the title fool you. This isn't a feud between the hero and the heroine. This is, as I said, a very sweet, soft romance. It's a friends to lovers romance. There's nothing forbidden, there's nothing wrong, there's nothing hidden. Everything is beautiful. But where there is a feud is between our hero. His family is feuding against another family. And I forgot the name of the one. I know the ones is the Mar Dragons and the... I can't remember. But anyway, our hero in this, he has discovered that he has a child that he didn't know about. Because he had a fling about 10 years ago, not even a fling, a one-night stand with his enemy's daughter. She actually lives in France most of the time and runs the winery over there, and he's at home running the family operation, which is a big ranch. He's a billionaire rancher, apparently. There's a few of those. And he discovers that he has a 9-year-old daughter, but again, the romance is not between him and this woman he had a one-night stand with. She has actually died. And in all these years, she never told him he had a daughter until she died, and she leaves custody and her shares in the family business to this man that she should hate. And that, you know, again, she had a daughter with but never told. And so this is a lot to come onto the hero. And he was never expecting to be a father. Again, he never even liked this woman. They got drunk and fucked, and they've never talked in all this time. And there's this little girl who is now his heir and his family's legacy, and she's been firmly in the clutches of their enemy for all this time. But when a judge in the town, who's a very good, fair man, says to this girl, who the girl doesn't want to stay with him either, she wants to stay with her family, that reminds her of her mother, and, you know, she's been through so much. Her mother had brain cancer, and it was very fast. She didn't have a lot of time with her. It was very sad. And our hero, when he sees his daughter, he is sure he's going to just sign the papers to have this child go to her grandparents, but then he sees her and he sees how cold and hard that family is, and he can't have that be for his daughter. And also he wonders what could have made this woman, and I'm sorry I'm using vague terms, I forgot to bring my notes over with the names on them, but you know, hero, heroine, you know who we're talking about here. Why she would have wanted this daughter to go to him if she didn't trust him. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of questions that go with that. And so, again, the judge doesn't just sign over. The judge wants the girl to try living with him. Sylvie is her name. I know that's the little girl's name. And see if she wants to be with him. So there's a lot of resistance to start with, and we're having a lot of problems there. So that's the setup of what our hero is dealing with. He's now a single dad. He runs the operations at his business. He has a wonderful family, and this little girl has just been thrown into all of it, and she's going to be headstrong, and she would rather be with her grandparents and all of these things. So our heroine in this story actually is the principal at Sylvie's school. So she wants to be there for the little girl, and the little girl is able to open up to her and talk to her about some of the things she's feeling, and she really encourages her to try to get to know her dad and to trust her mom's judgment. You know, your mom picked him for a reason, and, you know, she must have known that he could be a good father, or she never even had to let him know about you, right? Nobody would have known. And so this principal ends up becoming someone that both Sylvie talks to and then the hero talks to her as well, and it's a romance between the two of them. So honestly, and I say this, like, this isn't going to be the most sweeping romance you've ever read, and it might be quite boring to some of you, and That's okay. But there was just something about this story that really spoke to me, and the family was so good, and I just love this. So this is going to be one of two in a duet. Now, it isn't a duet where like the romance between these two is all wrapped up. And this was the Blackburn. Are they the Blackburns? I think it's the Blackburns. We see their side of the feud. And now the next book is going to be about this little girl, Sylvie, her uncle. So the brother to the woman who died, his name is Gabriel, and he's been running the Mardragon side of things. And now the next book is going to be an enemies to lovers, because it's going to be Gabriel, who's now the head of the Mardragon family, and the hero's sister. I think her name is Katie, but I could be wrong, but either way. So that one is going to be from the Mardragon's point of view, and we'll get to see maybe if we agree that the other side is a bit, you know, more culpable for things than we think, right? So that's how Sawyer Bennett is making this a duet. It's not because we had a cliffhanger for the romance. It's because we got to see the Blackburn side of it, and now we're going to see the Mardragon side of it. So I don't know. It just really worked for me. So I gave this one 5 stars. It's only a 2 on the spice scale, but you know what? It was so good. And when they started to fall for each other is really beautiful. There still is, you know, some conflict obviously to deal with, but there isn't conflict in their relationship, which I loved. So yeah, this one was, we had a cowboy billionaire, we had a secret baby, but it wasn't with the heroine. That's always interesting. Friends to lovers, small town, and a single dad. So there we go. Now we have another one that, let's just kind of stay in the cowboy vibes here. We had Bourbon and Lies by Victoria Wilde. This was a new to me author. This is only, this is a start of a new series, but I think it's only the 2nd series that she's done. So she hasn't written a ton of books, but I saw the cover of this book, right? Isn't it just, I'm kissing lots of things today. Isn't it just beautiful? I 100% signed up for this because of the cover and then some of the tropes. So this one said it's a woman on the run. She is in Witsec, and then our hero is actually an I don't think he was FBI. I keep wanting to call him FBI, but he was a canine officer, and he has his canine. Her name is Julep. I love Julep. I bring her up every time I mention this book because Julep was one of my favorite parts of it. And his family runs a bourbon company, and there's, I think, three brothers. And anyway, our heroine gets put into Witsec because of something she saw that she wasn't supposed to see. And she ends up staying in this small town, and even more so basically on this ranch. She gets given a cabin that's actually right next to the hero's cabin. And someone in town, which again, some of this is blurring already, but there is at least one person in town that knows why she's there and why she's been given that place, but nobody else does, because obviously it needs to stay a secret and keep it there. And so the hero doesn't trust her, and he thinks she's lying about some things. You know, this is a ex-law enforcement officer. He can pick out the fibs pretty easy, but you obviously can't tell him because she can't. And so he's very distrustful of her. And they start out not as enemies, but definitely there's some like rivalry going back and forth. Like as neighbors, they kind of get on each other's nerves. But his dog really likes her, and so the man don't stand a chance, because if Julep trusts the lady, if Julep likes her, what hope does he have, really? What hope does he have? And so anyway, these two do feel a crazy attraction for each other, and eventually things are going to spoil over. But what I loved about this one and why it worked so well for me is that it wasn't only the heat of attraction, because for him, he believes there's a family curse that you can't be with one of his family because you'll like die. He did lose a girlfriend. I can't remember if she was a fiance or not. And so he just believes he can't love anyone. So he's very resistant to that. It takes a lot for him to start to feel anything for her. But what really kind of wins him over is just he can see there's some good in her, and he's starting to put pieces together that she was a lady on the run, and he might not know why. But as he comes to get to know her, he knows that she probably isn't the person who's in trouble. Or I mean that she's not the bad person. She's hiding from someone. And when, you know, this isn't like a full-on spoiler, but I'm trying to tell you why I love the hero so much, is there comes a point in the story where she might need to move on again, And this man who's been afraid to trust or love or completely fall for a woman again, he said, well, if you go, Julep and I are coming too. And, you know, he has a line along the words of, you know, this has always been my home, but now my home isn't a place. My home is you. And so we can start over anywhere, you know, and I love that. And I said this in another video too, like he calls her honey. Like it starts off as a bit condescending at a point where she's like, call me honey, like blah, blah, blah. But eventually like honey is his endearment. And I know that's so basic, but I talked in another video about like, I get sick of some of the wild nicknames people have to have for everyone. And they can be fun in the moment. I get it. But like, I think about the example is I'm going to talk about a Rena Kent book shortly. And in like God of Pain, like he calls her Little Purple, which I'm not like making fun of that. My point is the things that become nicknames sometimes get very outrageous. Like there's A.L. Jackson where Little Trespasser is her nickname, which is more complicated to say than her name is, right? And I get it. Authors want a cute little nickname. You want something to go with. And I'm not saying you don't have it. Again, this isn't a critique on nicknames. What I'm saying is there's something extra special when you just have to say honey or baby, and it's the most romantic thing you've ever heard because you've gotten to that place with the characters. And for him to trust someone and be calling her honey, and like she calls him babe at some points, you're just like, this just feels so cozy. It just feels like real love. Like that's what my parents say to each other, you know. I like it. Also, I should say like honey is an endearment that I use with my friends, which I know not the same as a romantic thing, but like that's what I say to my friends. So to see just something nice and simple being used to show affection, I like it. That was a random tirade. This is what you're here for. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, then as I said, we're going to talk about Rena Kent. We got to do it. So God of War came out. Yes, God of War came out. I did space this one out between 2 days. That's not like I took that long. But I had pre-ordered the audiobook, as I have for the past couple ones. And I had the ebook ready to go as well. And I dived into this one. And this is another one that like I can't say much about this because it's literally a culmination of like Rena Kent's entire Renaverse that she's been working on all this time. But this is the romance between Eli and Ava, and we find out what the tension we felt between them for the previous books are. We also have jumped ahead a little bit in time, so we're no longer in school with anyone. And we begin this book with Ava having amnesia. And she is she is married to Eli. And she doesn't know how she ended up there. And also, there's still this like great animosity. Like she's like, how would I have married myself to him when I feel a certain way like that? Like, how did this happen? And what I did enjoy, and without to like spoil it, because I don't want to spoil this for anyone. I appreciated how the amnesia was handled. There wasn't these tons of flashbacks happening every other chapter. That's something I really dislike in a book with amnesia. Honestly, if I'm reading a book with amnesia and immediately it will say past, present, I'm gonna tap out because it's just, I don't think you should tell an amnesia story that way. For me, I get nothing out of it. And second chance romances that do it too. I don't care for it. I don't like it. And so the way that the amnesia really was a mystery to not just one person, like we don't know how we got to this point. Even the clues we're getting are very sparing until some things start to click into place. And it's also, from what we gather, would be very bad for her health for her to remember everything, and we don't know why. So those are the things, those are the questions. The mystery might just about drive you crazy. And for some people, you won't care for how Rena lays it all out. And I understand that. A couple things I will say from my end of it is that the mental health issues, depression, self-harm, and suicide attempts that are in this one are no joke. They really are not. There's a deteriorating mental state. There is a admission to a mental hospital in here, which, yes, are certain levels of spoilers to the story, but me as someone who is very much triggered by mental institutions, I say this there, I have very few hard triggers for me that I have to know about, and that is one of them. Harm to babies, animals, and then, you know, being committed, those are big deals for me. And the way that that was explored in here really tested me. It really tested me, because for a little bit there, I'm like, are we being gratuitous with where we're going? But anyway, again, I'm not going to spoil this book for anyone. I talk more in detail about it in my weekly wrap up, and I put up a spoiler chunk in that one if you want that thoughts. But I thought she handled this very well, and I was very moved by both what she was going through and also Eli and what he had done and the choices he made, whether right or wrong, where that was coming from. Because this is still a dark romance, so I didn't agree with how they were handling some of these mental health issues and things, but at the same time, that is what made this so powerful as well. So this wasn't my favorite in the series. That's why this one, I gave this one 5 stars. I did. God of Fury is still my favorite. That book is damn near perfect to me. Like, honestly, that book is perfect to me. I rated that very highly last year. I really loved it. But this was, there isn't a lot I would change in it. Am I comfortable with everything? No. Am I rushing to reread this? No, although I do have to reread it next month to annotate it. But I haven't stopped thinking about it. It's missing that piece where I like want to gush over it. It's more of like a book that it made me think about like what I would want to happen to me and how I would handle it, and like what I would do for a loved one, like that kind of thing. So this was very powerful. That's why it was a 5-star. That's why like this whole journey with this series has been wild to me. I don't know if I'll continue to read Rena Kent. I don't know, because in general, she still doesn't write the type of books I always love. There was something magic about the series. So she's going to be doing a dark hockey series next. And I'm about burned out with dark hockey romance. But we'll see. We'll see. This series was definitely worth the read for me. And though it's definitely become a very controversial series, not everyone loves what they got with it. I think it's a fascinating series for sure. Okay, now the last one that I want to mention that I gave 5 stars to. This one was almost 6 stars, and I'll tell you why it wasn't, of course, but it was almost a 6-star read to me, and I'm so impressed. And that was Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. I've been sharing about this one a lot lately. I made both a YouTube short and Instagram reel for it. I don't usually do those. Bloom so kindly sent me an early copy of this one. Came with this beautiful page overlay of them. It's so pretty. And this is book 2 in the Lakefront Billionaires. We have Lake Wisteria here. So yeah, this is a billionaire romance. This is also a nanny and a single dad. This has some really great representation in it as well, for the couple that's in it, and the family here is just, oh, I just love it. And yeah, so this book actually starts with our heroine as the nanny, and we have this little boy, I think is it Nico? Sorry, I've just read about a lot of Nico, so I think it's Nico, isn't it? Yeah, it's Nico. Funny, there's been like 3 books this month that I've read with a kid named Nico, so that's funny. Anywho, and Ellie is the nanny for Nico, and Nico has a degenerative eye disease, and he is going blind. And we found that out in book 1. I do recommend you read book 1 before reading this book. But you don't have to. I understand you don't have to. Some of you won't want to. Some of you will. I gave the first one a 4.5 star. So I definitely think it's worth it if you want to read 2 books that are really good. Who doesn't want 2 books? But these are also real chunks. So I understand if you just want to pick one and see which one you like best. So Raphael is our hero, and he's a bit of a grump, and to be honest, an asshole. And he's an asshole for a good chunk of this. So much so in the beginning of this book, he actually fires Ellie for this one mistake she makes. Now, I'm not saying it isn't a kind of a big mistake, but it is one where she had the best of intentions and she loves his son so deeply that for him to immediately fire her, it shows that he was waiting for a chance. Because the thing is, Raphael, he's jealous of Ellie. He's jealous of how much his son loves her and how connected he is. He's annoyed that he's attracted to her. He is annoyed that his ex-wife is fighting for time with Nico only to bleed him dry, which he's not going to be bled dry. The man's a billionaire. But he has a lot of anger. And when he fires Ellie, he makes a big mistake. And his kid just is not going to forgive him for doing this because his kid adores Ellie so much. And there was this vacation they're supposed to go on where they're going to be going to Hawaii, and Ellie was supposed to come with them, which again, Raphael was very resentful of the fact that Nico wanted Ellie to come with because he covets this time with his son. That's really what it is. That's why it's acceptable to me for him to be such a jackass, is because a lot of it is him coveting time with his son. He's a busy man. He has a lot of plates spinning. And so when he's able to have time with Nico, he doesn't want anyone else there. And like Nico wants to be around Ellie a lot. He really likes her. Anyway, and they're going to go to Hawaii because Nico is making memories. He's making memories. I cry every fucking time, guys. I'm sorry. He's making memories to last for when he can't see. And so they're going to Hawaii and they're going to all these beautiful locations and going swimming in the ocean and going on these hikes and going on helicopter rides and all these beautiful things so that he can store up all of those memories to keep for when he can't see anymore, because his sight is getting worse. He's starting to lose colors, he's starting to lose definition, and it's very sad. It's very hard to watch. Now, this book doesn't get depressingly sad about that. It really doesn't. It just is touched on enough to show that this is serious and that Raphael just feels it so deeply and how sad he is this is happening to his son, which of course it is. It's so sad that such a beautiful, bright light of a boy is struggling with this. It's really hard. So anyway, I've just talked enough. Again, I've talked about this a ton. Why I love this so much is a lot to do with that. I even though Raphael starts out as such an asshole, it's from such a good place. It's from such a good place that you can't help but be pissed at him and love him. You know, when we're in Ellie's POV, he's such a dick. And when we're in his POV, we see that he's being a dick, but that his heart is in such the right place that I never was like mad at him, even when I wanted to slap him. Even when he fires her in like the beginning of this book, you're like, what the fuck is this guy doing? What's happening? And then for Ellie, to talk about her a little bit, it is a struggle for her to work for Raphael because she is also attracted to Raphael, but she also is here for Nico. She's not here because she's attracted to Raphael. And she's actually a songwriter who's had some heartbreak in her life. And that's a dream that never really got to fully come to fruition. And now she's nannying for this boy, the boy who loves her, but the dad who seems to hate her. And she's just is kind of stuck in this. But she's willing to stay stuck for as long as she needs to for Nico, you know? And so there's so much to admire about Ellie. She's this light and she's sunshine, but she's not like, it's not that her heads are in the clouds, even if, you know, Raphael thinks she's too much of a hopeless romantic. Like, she loves so big and it's so good. And so why isn't this a 6-star book? Let's get into that. I'm ranting about this one enough. So I will tell you, this was a very slow burn, okay? It was. And I'm not the most patient of women, okay? I'm not. You know this. So the fact that this book is over 600 pages and we had to wait until like 80% for any sort of hanky-panky, okay? For any sort of that. Even for some of the love stuff to happen, it takes so long. It was tough, okay? It was tough. It won't be that tough for everybody. Some of you, you'll be fine. But I kept pushing because I was loving what I was reading. I liked this couple so much. I loved this little boy that it kept me reading. Even when there was parts of it where I was like, can we get to it? And I don't even mean get to sex. Like, of course I want to read that in a book. You guys know I love my spice. It wasn't even that. It was just like I needed them to stop spinning their wheels, and we weren't getting any traction, and it was tough for a while. But the payoff was so good. And once things are moving, like, Raphael is so good and just is adoring, and he is, you know, of course he lavishes her with gifts, and that's tough for her to accept, but like, he is a billionaire and he's a gift giver. Okay, his love language is gift giving. It just is. And the things that he does and the way that he shows that even though he's this billionaire and he's busy, he's always thinking of Nico and Ellie. He's always thinking of them. And so, oh, my heart was just so full when I was done. And that's why this was a 5-star, and it was almost a 6-star, because it was a lot of slow burn. And it wasn't, again, it isn't just the percentage wise. It's like there is a lot in this book. It didn't have to be over 600 pages. It didn't. It would still have had a lot of weight and a lot of love and all of that if it was 100 pages less. We could have cut it. So that's why I can't quite give this a 6-star, because a 6-star read, I wouldn't cut things out of it. I wouldn't need things to be gone. So it's a 5-star read, which is absolutely fine, because that's as high as I can rate it on all the scales anyway. It's only on my personal scale that, like, this will be in honorable mentions at the end of the year for sure. And those of you who love a more romantic story, those of you who like a slow burn, those of you who don't need a high spice, this is your ticket, guys. This is, if you love Single Dad, if you like Nanny, if you like her to call him on his crap, if you like to see some grovel, if you like to see them work through some stuff, it's there. Now, wow, I didn't realize I was going to gush about this one so much. The last thing to mention is some of the trigger warnings. Now, obviously, you know, I've kind of already mentioned the fact that, like, there is a sick child in here. Again, we don't dwell on his illnesses or anything. We know it's there. We know it's going to happen. And that does hurt us sometimes. But there was a tough pass for our hero. He didn't grow up a billionaire. Our heroine has done some self-harm. There's some really beautiful discussions about that. But she used to self-harm. She still thinks about it sometimes. So be prepared for that. No, like, unaliving attempts, but more of the, if we can call it, standard types of self-harm. That's just awful. I hate using, that's a bad way to explain it, but nothing that is like the extreme level of to unaliving, but there's self-harm. Our hero had food insecurities and a lot of stressors from his childhood. There was some domestic abuse that we saw when he was young and things like that. So definitely that type of stuff to worry about. And also parental neglect in some other ways too. So yeah, wow, I talked about this more than I meant to, but I just loved it so much. There's so many of my friends, I'm waiting for them to read it. It's a big book, so I understand it's taking a while. But the audio is out for this one. I believe it's in KU too. And just, you know, plug away at this one, because once you reach a tipping point, you won't be able to stop. And even, like, it was also very compelling in the beginning with that drama, like I said, about the firing and what's happening with Nico. So there was a lot in the beginning that snagged me. And I still, like, it wasn't that it was pulling teeth to get through it. It's just, it's long. And it was a lot. But it was beautiful. So, okay. Whew. I didn't think I'd have enough to talk about this month, and I sure did. So pink was definitely the theme of this one. So those were my favorite books. Let me know what your favorite reads are. Let me know if you've read some of my favorite reads. Just a gentle reminder, if you didn't like any of these books, please don't tell me here. That's not the place in Jen's comments to rag on the books that I gave 5 or 6 stars. It hurts me. If you want to go rag on it, go on over to Goodreads or find someone who didn't like it, because Goodreads, man, there are plenty of people who gave every good book a 1 star, and you can go bitch with them, okay? This is a gush zone only. We like to keep it nice and gushy around here. I don't know, that got weird, but it's not that I'm unopen to opinions. I just also don't care if you didn't like it, okay? But if you liked any of these, tell me which ones you did. Tell me which ones you want to read. I'll have links to all my favorites down below if you want to go snag it right now, and we'll see you in the next video.